Hey, I'm Corey.
And I'm Kyra.
And welcome to Above the Bar, where every week we are sharing conversations and libations. So lots of conversations, lots of libations, and a little legal twist to some current events, some hot topics that are going on in our world right now.
Yes. So before we get into the conversation, we're going to start off with our libation for the day. So our conversation today is going to revolve around something that is heavy on most Americans' heart, not just Americans, but most people's heart around the world. And that is the verdict from the Derek Chauvin case. It originates out of Minnesota. And so in light of Minnesota, I have drawn from them to have our inspiration for our cocktails today, which is called the Bootleg. And it's a popular Minnesota drink. It's very simple. It has tequila. Y'all know I'm a tequila girl.
Sounds good though.
It's very refreshing, very light. It consists of lemon, lime, some muddled up with mint leaves, and topped off with some club soda. So cheers to Minnesota and the Bootleg.
And I'm about to kill this. I am going to be bootleg at the end of this. So introduction. I should have said Eleanor because Corey's coming right on out with the bootleg.
Well, in lieu of that, I know that the conversation today is going to be heavy. Please grab your own cocktail. If you pause this, go make one, come back. I'm out here for it. Typically we don't have extras just up here waiting, but today we have it just because the conversation today is very heavy, and we are definitely going to pull on it from our personal perspectives as, Black Americans, but also as lawyers, because we're here not just give you information, but have that legal twist on top.
So I want to remind everybody that we are in our new season, and today we have come back to our roots, to our start, to my home, because we wanted to have an intimate conversation about something that is very personal to us as Black Americans. Certainly there's a legal aspect to it, but if you continue to follow us along for the season, you will see us in various restaurants, amazing restaurants throughout the Houston area. We were just in Veranda, and we'll be in other amazing restaurants. So make sure to tune in. We're adding a fun new twist to this season. So you have some surprises in store. We'll be talking about, last week you missed the amazing food. We should probably talk about that too, because we ate good. We ate good, but we also had some great drinks. So you'll see us in new surroundings. So don't be surprised and tune in for all the fun. And
I was going to say, that's not the only new part that's coming. It's Above the Bar.
That's not the only new part. We have a special surprise for today. We have pulled in some heavy hitters, some real experts, because you want to listen to us little old business attorneys spousing off on our legal rhetoric. You want to listen to our boss, a pro. And so we pulled in one. Yes, hooray. And we pulled in the renowned Adante Pointer, a civil rights attorney out of the Bay Area. He's handled some major cases that many of us have heard from, and I think this George Floyd case is really a build up of several other cases where we saw such injustice. We saw officers not being charged. We saw them not being prosecuted. And some of that, Mr. Pointer is the man with the plan to help us understand exactly what happened with the George Floyd case, but also what we can see and expect in other cases as we go through what seems to be like a daily shooting. So very sad situation, but navigating it, we need some help. So, Mr. Pointer, do you want to say your own little spiel?
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, ladies. And, I'm joining you above, below, beside the bar. And, but no, thanks for having me. I bring greetings from sunny California, the Bay Area in particular, Oakland, to be specific. And I've practiced I've practiced civil rights legislation and litigation, I should say, for 16 years. I have handled many cases. One of the ones that's most popular that people actually know about is the Oscar Grant case, which was later turned into the movie Fruitvale, starring Michael B. Jordan. So many people are familiar with that case and that movie. And so that is one of the seminal cases that I've handled. But unfortunately, I've had the honor and the privilege of representing many people whose names never make a headline, who don't have a hashtag, and they don't go viral, but nevertheless, their life counted. So, that's what I've spent the majority of my time practicing law, taking care of is our community.
Well, that's amazing. And we thank you so much for joining us. And I'm sure our audience is going to be thrilled about getting some real life, not just how do we assess the case? Because often as lay people, you just watch the case and you're happy with the result. We are happy with the way the Chauvin case turned out, but so many other cases we don't understand. We don't understand the charges, and we certainly have some newly charged cases that, you know, we want things to go well. We want justice to be served, but what does that mean? And how are we holding our justice system accountable, right?
And like this was the guilty verdict was just the first hurdle. It was, as I made the analogy, it's the prelims and now we're headed into finals. What is going to be the outcome from the sentencing? Like there are 3 different charges that he was found guilty on, but he's never had a prior record. There were some other not nuances, but aggravated factors that the prosecutors are asking for the judge to take into consideration when going through the factor of what to sentence him to. So we're definitely going to get more into that, but it's a lot.
I want to definitely talk about that, but I just want to kind of take off the lawyer hat for 1 second and just kind of go around and see what everyone's first impression was. Like, how did you feel when you got that verdict? I know, like, I can look back and remember in the OJ verdict, I remember it. I was just in high school, how I felt exactly that moment it was released. I remember running through my all-white high school, cheering through the hallways about it. So how did you feel? I think it's something people will remember, because I remember feeling super anxious. Like, they were like, the judge came and sat down and my heart was like, boom, boom. I was like, oh God, well, I had a heart attack, I think, over this. So, Adante, what did you feel, just like as a Black man?
As a Black man, you know, there was a sense of relief, because unfortunately we have been let down so many times by this justice system. I call it the injustice system. And so, or the just us system. And so there was some relief from hearing that this time the jurors, the system got it right. But, you know, there's still much more work to do, not just nationwide, but in that particular case, because the sentencing is when I will really just feel like, whew, when I hear the judge bang the gavel and give him 20, 30, or some odd years, you know?
What about you, Kyra? How'd you feel?
So I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me obviously was like happy, relieved, and feeling like, okay, the jury got it right. And Corey and I had this conversation the other day, but like they've seen us as human. And we've gotten to the point where I feel like the prosecutors did a great job. It was a smack in the face that I took as a Black person and someone who grieved that another Black man's life was lost, when the defense attorney made the similar comparison that the factors of murder are similar to baking a cookie. This case is not about baking chocolate chip cookies, sir. The fact that you dumbed it down to that level was a slap in the face, like, oh, yeah, this man, lost his life, but just like baking cookies. When you make your decision, think of it as something as simple as that. So I was relieved that the jury did, find justice for George Floyd. And so I was happy about that, but I was kind of just like, I wish it never happened.
Yeah.
Like, I was still sad. I was sad for George Floyd's family. And even I had a little bit of sympathy for Derek Chauvin and his family. Like, dude, you're done for. Well, yeah, they did leave him.
I was
like, take him up
there, man.
So now I'm ready to see what we're gonna do in the sentencing, but it'll be interesting.
I mean, I think I agree with both of you guys. I felt such a relief. Like, well, one, I think I joined a lot of people. I thought he was gonna be convicted of something, especially how quickly the jury returned. But I didn't think he was going to get guilty on all 3 counts. So I was like, ooh. So as I was feeling this joy, and I started to cry. I was feeling so overwhelmed. And part of it was like, I was so nervous that things were going to go bad and that we were going to, excuse my language, fuck shit up. Yeah. Like, that's what I thought it was about to come down to, because people were going to be so angry. I felt like everybody had their pitchforks out. And that's why I was kind of like, oh, I got to go put my pitchfork up before I even come out and try to say, like, oh, I'm happy, because, like, things were going to get interesting. Yeah. So, real quick. Like, almost instantaneously, I said, I can't believe I'm so happy that somebody saw what was clearly on TV and said, a reasonable person would not be afraid of this man and think that he his stature, his big blackness would make him so scary that, of course, it would be reasonable that somebody stood on his neck for 9 minutes because he's scary to me. And, he was dead for 2 minutes while he was on his neck, but he might pop up because he's on drugs. And, people on drugs are so tricky. They stop breathing and they start breathing again, So we've seen juries before come back with a verdict to say, the real question is, is this a reasonable action for a police officer, a reasonable action for a person? And we've seen juries say, yeah, that is reasonable.
And that is why, in the same token, I feel like we talk about voting and getting out and voting, but I also feel like showing up if you're selected as a juror, that's part of your due diligence, right? Your civic duty, because that reasonableness that's based on that jury is based on their personal experiences. So if there are not people like us that show up in juries to be reasonable what our life experiences are, then of course that jury is going to say, they only see it from their, perspective most times. So I was very, like we say, we're all ecstatic and glad that the guilty verdicts are in.
Yeah. So I was excited, and what I posted after it, because, there were a lot of posts, there were a lot of tributes to George Floyd. I live in Third Ward. This is where he's from. I know people who went to Yates with him. So, it was like, yes, people, they were describing on the news as celebrating. I'm not necessarily celebrating. I do have some joy about this recognition. And I feel like this precedent is set for other police officers to know, like, you just aren't above the law.
Right. You
need to pay attention, because you could be the man now worrying about his booty. Right? Pay attention. Your booty matters. White booties matters.
Right.
So
go ahead.
I was while I was feeling this, like, okay, now they'll start to pay attention. It's kind of like,
you can't just be reckless. There is some repercussion.
There's some repercussion, but you have that joy, but you have that sorrow. Somebody won't ever return home to be a parent, to be a partner, so it's still like the loss. I'm not celebrating, if you will, like, oh, gotcha. Like, why should we have to fight this hard just to be recognized that he's human? He's not superhuman. He's a Black man, and he was afraid for his life for that long. Imagine dying in those kind of circumstances. I'm not like one for ghosts and ghouls and stuff, but imagine what that does to your spirit to die under that kind of trauma. Please let me go. Mama, help me. Please let me go. And you're being compliant, because everyone always says, why don't they just listen to the police? Why don't they just follow instructions? So it's just a lot to unpack with that. But let's start with this sentencing. Adante, what do you think is going to happen? We know from Minnesota law that there can't just compile all this. So it's not like he's going to face adding all these sentences together because they arose from the same act. So what should we expect?
I think you're going to see something between the 8 to 15-year range. The judge has an opportunity to look at all of this, understand he's a police officer. So all the good stuff that he's going to talk about that he's done in terms of service to the community is going to be taken into account. He doesn't have a criminal record. That'll be taken into account. At the same time, the judge has a full range of options in front of him, from 40 to 10 years, So, I imagine it'll be 15 years, but it could also be on the low end, more like 8 or so. But, what we can't lose sight of, even though the sentencing is very important, even getting a conviction, especially a conviction in Minnesota. And this was not a jury made up of all Black people, all minorities who understand what it is to be harassed and have force used against them by police. This was a jury of Americans, meaning it was a mixed jury, white people, Latinos, Black people, and men and women. So, I think it's a resounding victory for justice, but, this is 1 point on the scoreboard when the scoreboard is like 3 to 300. Okay. Like, there's a lot more justice that has to be done. But I'm going to tell you this, and I'm sure you guys will feel it. When I did feel a sense of celebration is when he had to turn around and put on them damn bracelets.
Yeah. That's accurate.
Because revoking of Z bail.
Right, exactly.
Because I think most people realize, and I think we might more as attorneys, that just because you've been arrested or just because you're in trial does not mean you're in jail.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And we've seen other cases where traumatically Black people have been left in prison for long periods of time without having the privilege of bail. And bail is a privilege, right? And you have to pay for play.
Exactly.
Unless you are released on your own recognizance, meaning just released because they trust you. You have to pay to get out. And so someone posted a pretty penny, I'm sure, to have him out while trial was going on. What do you think the odds are? Because I think the next step after sentencing will be a long range of appeals. Will he be out during that time too?
Well, he'll have an opportunity to essentially ask that he be granted bail or bail be set. But, to me, given the nature of this case, and frankly, I watched a fair amount of the trial, I don't get from this judge, but hey, people can hide their hands. I don't get from this judge that he's trying to look for every opportunity to lessen the burden or the load on Chauvin. I think this judge wants to give him the way he would treat him the way he's going to treat all the other, people who he's sent to prison for a long time. So, but we'll see. We shall see. He should not be granted bail. He should be spending every day going forward for the next 15, 20 years, like he's saying, watching his booty, making sure he doesn't drop the soap, and, looking for some
trying to stay out of general population.
Man, he's going to be PC'd up, for real. And, but, one of the things you also have to realize too is that his time in custody is going to be around his fellow police officers. So, the way in which that he's treated is not going to be like a cop killer would be treated coming into jail. Sure. Okay. So, but at the end of the day, this was an important victory for justice. And we have to savor it. And I'm going to take a shot on that. Okay.
Oh, yes. Cheers. Oh, I drank all mine because this stressed me out. I'm stressed out. But I do want to ask, from a trial perspective, and as we see more trials, because I think Trayvon Martin was certainly one of the first where I was like really tuned in, and we were watching it all on TV and social media was posting it. Do you have any memorable moments from this trial that were like critical to?
That's what I wanted to ask. So I wanted to ask, like, you mentioned that you watched a lot of the trial, and I have my own sentiments, but I want to hear yours as to what do you think were some of the determining or differentiating factors that resulted in a guilty verdict versus this numerous verdicts before that have not come out as such?
The biggest thing to me, frankly, is not the video, although the video is critical and important. Because without a video, we wouldn't even be here. Okay? He'd just be another brother that died on the side of the road, and people are mad about it, and they will say,
who knows what happened.
Right. But so setting aside the video, the biggest thing is that his fellow police officers, the people who
the police chief,
the police chief came in and said he was wrong as two left shoes. Right. And so if we start seeing that in other cases, then the conviction rate will go up. Mm-hmm. But, they have a blue wall of silence, and, they don't turn on their brother. I mean, they have a no snitching policy. They operate like a gang. So, in that way, it'll take a while for that to happen. But I think that was the most determinative thing. When the chief comes in and says, you were wrong, we didn't train you to do that, there was no reason for you to be doing any of that stuff, that's pretty powerful,
Yeah. Another part that I thought was really kind of impactful was, in addition to that, it was the testimony of the pulmonologist and how he broke down the science of it in a very detailed way for the layman's, when I say layman's, for the every average day person to understand it. From pictures to detailed description to looking at video, saying timestamp, this is exactly at this moment when he, could no longer breathe, understanding what's going on with the lungs and the weight and all of that, kind of painting a picture as to what a body, and not just, they make the point, not just his body because of his heart conditions and, other factors, but any healthy person with these type of constraints would have still reached the same type of outcome. So I thought that his testimony was great. And the fact, I believe that Corey brought it up, that he was not paid to do so.
He waived his compensation. Right. And I think Adante can attest to how much these experts get paid. And he said, what?
Look, I had to give a Ric Flair, woo! I don't know if that over y'all heads, but
we know who Ric Flair is. Come on,
man. Look, hey, for him to come in to waive his fee, that actually added to his credibility, big time. Mm-hmm. It was not only just a humanitarian gesture, if you will, but it takes away the questions that he would have got around his bias or his motive, or what his interest was in satisfying his employer who paid him, which was the state prosecution or the county. So, I think that was big. But isn't that what we do as lawyers? I'm sure that's what you all do as well when you're sitting across on the other side of the table for your client. You take a complex concept, break it down into something that they can understand and appreciate so that they can then make the best decision with your advice or the information you're giving them. And so many times people get on the stand, whether it's a lawyer and they're not testifying, but asking questions, or it's a witness who's testifying, and the stuff that they're talking about is all over in the clouds. And we're like, what is this for? What does this mean? So breaking stuff down is critical. And as a litigator watching that, they did a great job prepping the witness because, I'm sure that they went over that time and time again in order to break it down into bite-sized pieces that everybody can understand, you know?
Yeah. I think there were a lot of good moments.
If I may, another point, just not on that, but something that I'm sure you guys could pick up on. I liked, I've looked at the trial the first day. I saw a brother who was up there and on his stuff, right?
Yes.
Like, made me proud. And then I was like, where did the brother go? I mean, I didn't see him as frequently questioning witnesses.
Okay. You talking about the DA?
Yeah, the DA, exactly. The district attorney.
He made an amazing, and I recommend to anybody to go and look up his speech that he walked out of the courtroom and gave, because he gave some great historical references, which pretty much just talks about why does this repeat? It's because it's the exact same factors. It's like he talked about all these different riots throughout from 1919 to 1965 when this study that he's quoting was conducted, and actually 1968. But you put people in the same boiling pot, and they get mad at the crabs that get up and, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same crab boil. and your reaction is as if you're surprised, but the circumstances hasn't changed. And so shame on us, America, if from 1919 to 2020, we still have the same circumstances that make people leave their homes and go riot on the street.
Absolutely. Someone much smarter than me said, riot is the language of those who essentially oppressed or those who have been silenced, and you're exactly right. And I think that commission was the current commission, the report that he was referring to. So I mean, look around, the conditions are the same. They went from lynching you, hanging you from a tree to killing you in the street, and then you go viral, versus back when they were hanging us from trees, they would take pictures and make postcards out of that and send it around the country. So, this is a deeply rooted historical problem, a plague, a stain upon the fabric of our nation. I mean, hell, the police are a development of slave catchers.
Right. And what was crazy, not crazy, and I shouldn't say surprise because nothing should surprise us these days.
It's as American as apple pie.
Right. But Chauvin's demeanor it did not come across to me as if he were sympathetic or regretful or anything. He was just kind of just sitting there with this very stoic face. And then once the jury verdict was read, he looked confused like,
you ever see like Panic in real life? Like, well, you remember that movie about the emotions in your head? Like, the emotion in his head was running around like a circle, and he was just
going back and forth. And I saw the meme that was like, "Oh, y'all found me guilty."
Right.
I have to go to jail.
I can't go home right now. I can't go home. Oh, I gotta go right now. Yeah.
Right now.
Right now.
I didn't even do a good number two. I was, stomach hurt. I need to go home myself.
No, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, you better worry about the brother gonna be like, you want your cornbread?
Wait, have you seen? Okay, so this is a complete aside, but there's like a meme with the guy who was on Scare Straight, who was like, I like it when they wear their pants low. It's all the meme was with him behind.
The booty pirate?
Huh?
The booty pirate dude?
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, listen. He got some problems. But it's crazy though, because he really was sitting there the whole time, like he was just at a college lecture. And then when, it was like Shanghai surprise, all of a sudden he's like, oh shit, wait, this is real? Yeah, man, you killed somebody, like you're going to jail now. But I think that also goes to the casualness and the arrogance in which he did the whole thing.
Arrogant.
So I think
arrogant.
Yes. And not just the arrogance, but the cruelty of his true intentions. And so I know that the prosecutors are raising these aggravated factors for the judge to consider in the sentencing phase. And so they mentioned part of it was his cruelty, Part of it was the vulnerable position of Floyd.
And him keep pulling on the handcuffs.
Exactly. The fact that there were children around. And I think there are two others that I'm not thinking of. But do those factors normally come into play? Is that specific to Minnesota? Will the judge actually really take them into consideration? I know that you don't know for sure, but just
well, I mean, you know, a judge at sentencing is supposed to look at what's presented to him or her. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, the prosecution will bring up all those points that those are aggravating circumstances. So
right.
Looking at the range of sentences, it should be on the high end because these are the things that warrant it being on the high end. You know, these are aggravating factors. You know, so but to the how much will it factor into what the judge does? We'll find out. You know, this is like waiting to get the Oscar or the Grammys envelope to see who won the award, you know, in a lot of ways. So I know that our whole entire nation, and particularly Black folks, are going to be at the edge of our seats because, you know, we have a long history of knowing just when we start feeling
right,
they're going to give us justice, some equality, and hold people accountable for victimizing our community, the rug has been taken out from under us. So,
and I think, you know, for me, when I talked about like that, the sadness, this is over a alleged $20 counterfeit bill, which, you know, in all honesty, I think probably anybody may have passed a counterfeit bill alone. You get $20, you spend $20. So there is even no intention.
$20 bill came from him giving somebody change. Somebody asked him for change for something, or that's a story that I read, and that's how he even got that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like anybody could get a counterfeit $20 bill, right? And so, you know, one would think, and that's where I'm like, do detectives do detecting anymore? Like, what responsibility is it of the police not to come and arrest, but to come and investigate what's going on and not assume and not say, well, you're guilty, I'm taking you in. $20 has to be a ticket, even if he ran out, you know, a Class C misdemeanor theft, which is under certainly $20 would not be even a theft charge. A theft charge you get a ticket for. So why would he get arrested and killed over a $20 bill? So people bring up he was on drugs, it was this, it was that. You turn to Fox News, you see it all the time, but it was $20, which most people would not expect to go to even jail over, much less prison, much less be arrested, but to die over this allegedly counterfeit $20 bill. It's part of where that sadness came in, like, oh, this over $20? Like, yo, man, I don't know what happened with $20, but you have a ticket, show up in court, prove you didn't, you know, try to pass this $20 off and go about your life.
It shows the video. I mean, over an alleged, well, assuming it was a counterfeit 20, that doesn't necessarily mean that you knew it was counterfeit. Hell,
exactly.
I tell you all the time, stuff it in my pocket, never look at it, and pay for the next thing with it. Who goes and looks through all their bills and holds it up to the light? You take the money, you assume if it's being brought to you or given to you in exchange, that it's real. So, you know, they didn't even prove that he knew that it was a counterfeit bill. On top of that, you have to see the video. The cops, when they first approached the car that he was sitting in, they had their gun out. They knocked on the window with the gun. He turns around, he's staring down the barrel of a gun over an alleged $20 counterfeit bill. So the aggression in which officers deal with Black people from the beginning all the way through the end is exemplified in George Floyd's case. And that's why it's in our community.
And I hate they don't talk about that enough, because a lot of people don't. You see the 9 minutes and you see the standing on the kneeling on his neck, but you don't even understand that the whole experience was overly aggressive.
Yeah,
it's not commiserate with the crime. We have, you know, cases now somebody was with a knife or with a violent weapon or attacking the police. You are minding your business, sitting in a car. Is that an investigation? Once you come in with a gun, the investigation over. I'm nervous. I'm already nervous when the police pull me over, but certainly if there's a gun in my face, I don't know.
But the thing that pisses me off is the fact that there was someone who was, I don't know if it was officer. It was the officer. I think it was the Asian guy who was also on trial.
Oh, yeah.
Right now. And he made the remarks that, you know, when they walked up to Floyd's car, that he seemed nervous and anxious from the beginning. I'm sorry, we see this all the time. So yes, we're nervous when you walk up. Like, I had to after hearing him say that, I had to self-reflect on how I interact with the police. Something as minor as when I get in my car, I always make sure that if I put my big purse in the back seat, I make sure I take my small purse out so that it's near me. If I get pulled over, so I don't have to do too much moving around to get my bag out the back seat. So I'm sorry, we see how y'all treat us, the majority, or we see enough stories about police and how they interact with Black people that yes, when you roll up on us, we are automatically nervous and on 10 because for the slightest thing, that could be our last moments on this earth. So I was just like, y'all be on 10 from the beginning and then want to look at us like, well, why y'all nervous? But then y'all can't be nervous because you want to blame the crowd for your behavior. Wait, what? Like, I know I just switched topics, but if you could talk anything about that, it kind of pissed me off because they were trying to blame the crowd for their heightened behavior. And I'm just like, really now? That's what y'all coming up with?
Look, when you know you was wrong as two left shoes, you trying
you come up with anything,
everything to try to throw everybody off. You know what I mean? But it doesn't make any sense because they talk about how nervous they are, but you're the one with the badge, you're the one with the gun, you're the one with your brothers or fellow cops there and more
training.
All the training you have, hand-to-hand combat, firing and shooting guns, batons, tasers, handcuffs, like, and the person, you as a citizen who's unarmed, who didn't even know you're going to have the interaction, you're the one that they feel the burden is on to be cool, calm, and collected.
Right.
But you're the one looking down the barrel of a gun or at the end of a taser or getting struck by a baton or punched or kicked or any number of things sprayed with mace, like the brother who was a lieutenant in the colonel in the army.
Yeah.
You know, he's trying to have a conversation and they're so hell bent on breaking your will to make you comply.
Mm-hmm. Hands completely out. He was like this, "Hey officer, what's wrong?" And then they were like, he was like, "I'm afraid. I don't want to get out."
Right. Over what? Would you gonna write him a ticket? I mean, the worst thing that was gonna happen there that he supposedly you stopped him for a traffic violation, I guess, is a ticket, you know, which is about money. It ain't that he did anything. The most that could happen if you sign the ticket, go to court, you lose, is you pay money. So you want to kill me and abuse me over some money that you want to create for me as a debt. You know what I mean? So, you know, the issue with policing is so deep because it starts from a premise of I'm going to control you and I have to break your spirit and I have to make you submit to me. And if you don't, this is all that what happens to you. And that's the arguments you see under all the Twitter fingers. You know, if you'd have complied, it wouldn't have happened. You know, if you'd have just done what the officer said, it wouldn't happen. And it's like, is that a death sentence if I don't move fast enough? Does that mean you're entitled to kill me?
Even if it's illegal request. Right. Like, you know, with the same people who are, because often these arguments are the same people who are like, this is my gun right, this is the First Amendment right. It's not your right. You can't ask me that. What laws of action do you have to tell me to get out the car? What did I do wrong? So a lot of times you see with the lieutenant and even with the younger guy also in Minnesota is that they're just saying, what are you charging me? What is your suspicion? What's going on? And they won't answer. They only say, get out the car. Yeah, but I'm scared. Like, why? Because
and it goes to that humane sense. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, that's why I love to put officers on the stand in court or a deposition. Because at the end of the day, they're so used to demanding you do something or asking you the question. They're not used or comfortable or familiar with the idea, especially when they see me as a young Black guy asking the question. No, I control this. This is my court. This is my venue. This is my stage. This is my show. You have to answer my questions. How I ask them, when I ask them, and where I ask them right now. And so, you know, but anyway, that's me as a little getter.
No, I love it. But I think in addition to this wanting to get us to demand and, you know, comply with their demands, I feel like there's also this innate suspicion that you did something wrong. Yeah. If you give them a little, like, oh, got him, he did this. Now I know I'm gonna pin him for X, Y, and Z.
You got that air freshener. You can't put that in your back window. That's what?
From personal experience. That? I was in Chicago, had a rental car. I thought I had the lights on because they were on in the interior, but they were not on outside of the car. Put my signal on, got in front of a cop car to get on the freeway. They pulled me over. Man, we're pulling you over because your lights aren't on. Okay, I'm in a rental car. This is why. They held me for almost 2 hours.
Wow.
And I'm like, what are y'all looking for? I have a Texas license. I'm clearly visiting. This is a rental car. Are you trying to run my license because you just know, oh no, she did something wrong? First of all, if I was a criminal, I'd be way smarter than to do something stupid and get in front of you, but I ain't have no license. But that's besides the point. But the fact that I'm just like, I have to call my mom. Like, look, mom, this is what's going on. And the fact that we as Black people, as an adult, as an attorney, feel like, let me still, and I don't know what it is with this reaching out to your mother in that type of sense of environment.
Help me, mama.
You like, mama, help me. This is where I'm at. This is going on. Because if something goes left, I just want to give you a heads up.
I mean, kind of like, if that's the last person you talk to, you want it to be your mama, you feel like the justice gonna come through your mama. Mama, help me. I ain't tripping.
Mama gonna tear up the city behind you.
Yo, what?
Mama, come around here.
But you know what you're touching on, really what I hear you saying is something that I say often when I'm talking or I'm on these subjects, and that is, in some people's minds, in some people's eyes, you were born the defendant. So you don't have to do anything for you to be suspicious. You don't have to do anything for you to be on the defense. You know, they're on the offense. So they see you on the defense and as a defendant. And so that's the implicit bias that people carry. And unfortunately, those people who carry that implicit bias have been given the authority to use deadly force.
And show up on your jury.
Show up on your, and they show up all the time, you know? And going back, I think, Kyrie, you said something, or you guys said something about jury service. Do you know how happy I am when I'm in the courtroom and I look out and I see just one Black person, two Black people? Don't let it be 5 Black people. You know? I would never lose a case if I was trying the cases to my community, right?
Yeah.
If my clients had a jury of their peers, I'd be defeated. Oftentimes what we're doing, and even probably for you all in the business world and what you guys do in terms of putting stuff together, you're selling and packaging your client in a way to where it's palatable or it's acceptable to people who don't look like and don't have the same experiences as probably your client, you know? So I tell people all the time, we're chameleons and we might change stripes, our colors and everything, but we're still the same animal.
Yeah.
We just have to adapt and adjust in order to survive in a hostile environment.
For sure. Adante, do you have any tips for people if they get pulled over by police, like how to act? When I say how to act, I hate using that term, but what their rights are and how to respond to police when they are pulled over? Sure.
You know, having been a person who's been pulled over a number of times, you know, it's like a rite of passage. If you're a Black person behind the wheel, you're going to have some interaction, chances are, and having been pulled over at gunpoint and all that kind of stuff. The biggest thing I can tell you, and it doesn't mean that it's going to save the day for you, but it really is de-escalate the situation. So like you said, you know, if you know that your driver's license or your papers or whatever it is that you documents you're going to have to show them if you get stopped, you need to have that in a place that you can readily get to. Don't do any reaching without telling the officer what you're about to do and getting permission to do it. So when you're getting pulled over and they're walking up to the car, that's the wrong time to start digging down in your purse or looking in the glove compartment or putting your hand behind the seat to pull a bag or whatever, your duffel bag up to the front. Like, we already know the officers are on 10. I don't know if they're scared or cowards or what, but it is what it is. And so they're already ready at the slightest movement to do something. So I always tell people, look, wait till they get there, tell them what you're going to do, get permission, then do it. Try to de-escalate the situation. And just as importantly, understand that when you're on the side of the road, they're in control. That's not the time to start turning into Johnny Cochran or Clarence DeRoe and start litigating your case on the side of the road. There's no judge, there's no umpire, there's no referee to say you're right and they're wrong or anything. What you need to do is get out of there alive and then come see somebody like me, where we can then bring that into court and change. And like the tables, they always change, right? They always switch up. So come into a courtroom where there's rules, where you have the advantage. Okay? Don't try to litigate your case on the side of the road. No one there that you're going to feel you other than the officer, and he ain't feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what? Sometimes that's very infuriating because we see videos of Caucasians who pop off on the police. Like, why the fuck?
I know my rights, and I'm gonna drive off for you now.
Yeah, and they drive off carrying the policeman. I saw that he was dragging the policeman, and he still, you know.
Yeah.
So we think like that's not the time to try to enforce those same rights. Like, you know, that's the time to just say, I see you. Maybe if you have the opportunity to record, even if the recording, because some people want to be like, you on camera, maybe just record the audio, you know,
right.
You just have your phone down without it being conspicuous. But, you know, I think it's unfortunate and it is not fair because sometimes we get caught and that's not fair. Other people do it. It's not fair, but you're alive. And let's be unfair and alive to fight the fight another day. You don't have to win that day. Don't be so stuck in winning that you can't be in survival mode. Like, let me just, okay, you give me a ticket, whatever. Let me go about my life.
I'm gonna say I know it's frustrating because I've been in that position more than once, but like you say, the priority is to have you here another day. And if the escalation is what we have to do, if we have to be the bigger people, which I feel like we are a lot of the time,
we always
and I know we're tired of being that way, but if you're ever in that situation, please be the bigger person and see another day, and we can fight it a different way.
I tell people all the time, look, I'd rather be talking to you than your mother or your kids or your wife or whomever about you. Okay?
Yeah.
So, you know, the idea is do not be dead right. You know, and I have a film about my own interactions, you know, with the police where they pulled me over at gunpoint and made me crawl on the ground and all this kind of stuff for no good reason. And, you know, it's called dead right because you don't want to be dead right. You know, you want to be alive and right, not dead right. Okay?
Yeah.
So,
But then you have crazy situations like George Floyd, which I don't think he was trying to be right. I just think he had a very zealous officer who.
And he was, part of it was he was, I mean, he's panicking. You going to jail for something that you shouldn't even you should maybe get a ticket for. You know, so like I said, I think he was at least cognizant of the injustice. Like, what am I going to jail for?
Right.
Like, why are you treating me this way for? But, you know, and that's part of what's angers me. Like, why should we have to have this certain Black people protocol when you get pulled over? Don't do this, do that. Police aren't here for you. You know, like we have to learn this protocol. We have to teach it to our children. It is unfair. And anyone who has a Black son, it just feels mortified. And I think with the new case, it reminded me of his name, Adante. Another case in Minnesota.
Dante Wright.
Dante Wright. You know, a lot of people, I just saw a white mom post. You know, I appreciate her candor. Like, I'm terrified because I assume my half-white son's status. I thought my white side made him not Black enough for this situation.
Oh, no.
She has a study. She has studied the nation. There was such thing as the one-drop rule. Okay. And one-drop rule means if you have one drop of anything other than white in you, you ain't white, you Black. Okay.
I get what she's saying. I have some problems with
I do have problems with what she's saying, but what I think is how you visually look is how you perceive to the world. Yes. So even if you're half white, if you look Black, or if you look like a question mark, then they're gonna treat you like a question mark. They think you are. The exact heritage doesn't matter. How you look matters a lot. The persona around how you look matters more than the actuality of you being half white, a quarter white, because sometimes people who are quarter white look whiter than people who are half white, or you know, in different numbers. So I think sometimes you think, oh, it will do this for me. But I always tell, as a mother to a Black son who is cute and fair skinned, it's like, it's not how you look now, it's how you will look. Because I could treat you like people might treat you now, which is, oh, let me give him something. He's so cute. He said, one day he still might be a very tall, very scary Black man. I'm going to treat you like that from day one. Because that may be your life. You are only a baby for a little bit. You a grown man for a long time. Treat you like how you may be treated as a grown man, because you have to know how to respond to things, not like, what you mean, man? It's just me. It's just like
I always get what I want.
Nah, they might not think you so cute. And they may not think you so unintimidating. They may be very intimidated. So let's learn from day one how to act. And instead, we have to treat people that way. But what were you going to say about parents or that sentiment?
Oh, that sentiment disturbs me because that means that you already acknowledge that there's a problem but you feel like your whiteness should excuse your son from that problem instead of addressing and advocating the issue, which would be your, I mean, I'm not saying that she has or hasn't, but that sentiment to me was more of a, oh, well, I'm white, so I can protect my family versus my son is half Black and there's an issue with him being Black or anyone else being Black that needs to be corrected. So
that's I love a Black man, or I procreate with a Black man or a Black person, and how have I become an advocate for my kids, whatever the range of their problems. But I mean, this may be the dicey part where I shouldn't say, but there have been a lot of half Black people who maybe not fully live in that space who have been silent in all of this. And I'm only going to say The Rock because I know he expressed some potential political ambition, but he is fully half Black. He passes for ambiguous or more interracial than he is, but his dad's a full-grown big Black man, you know, and I haven't heard him say anything about any of these things.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing is that when you have privileges, they're very hard to give up or to relinquish or turn your back on. And so to the extent that you don't have to deal with what it really means to be Black in everyday life, but you get the advantage of some of the privileges of some people thinking you're Black and other people not being sure and giving you a pass, I'm sure it's very hard for those people to give it up. The point is, though, is that you enjoy your status. And it's very hard because, as I always say, everybody want to be Black till it's time to be Black. You know? Everybody like Black culture. You want to listen to music. You want to wear the clothes. You know, you want to have a white boy summer. You want to date Black women and all this stuff, right? Yeah.
Well, everybody had to drink on that. Oh.
You know, until the police show up, until they value your home less than what it is, until they won't refinance you, they won't give you the loan at the points, but they'll have points on it. Until, you know, all these different things, you're getting pulled over 100 times a day and harassed, you know, until you get second-rate food options in your community. Everybody wants to be Black till it's time to be Black because it's.
Oh, you just gonna make me drink because I'm saying it's your fault. This is your fault.
That's why I give it up to Colin Kaepernick, because it's not hard. It's what are you going to stand for? And once you figure out what you're going to stand for, then the decision, you just got to roll with it. And so for Colin Kaepernick, he made that tough decision to be like, no, yes, I do have these privileges as a football player. I am afforded these luxuries, but what's more important is the justice to my people. And I am going to get out of my comfort zone and stand for them, even if it costs me X, Y, and Z. And so that is why I have so much respect for him, because some people cannot say nothing, not do anything, but he chose his platform in a way that was not disrespectful to anyone, even though they made it that way. Did not harm anyone or anything like that, but to raise a voice and light a candle to an injustice and be like, regardless of how comfortable I am, there are millions of people who are not, and I'm going to represent them and shed light on this, versus someone like The Rock, I guess, who has decided to fall back into his comfort, and that's what he chooses to say.
I mean, and it's Black people, but it's other interracial people that you would not know. Maybe it's not on their face, like you wouldn't know. Pete Wentz is half Black.
Yeah.
You know, have you ever heard him, you know, have any conversation and so that's what I'm saying, where it may be just visually, it looks like, so Black problems aren't his in a day-to-day setting. Yeah. But other people, you know, they may just be privileged out of it. But often when people don't know you, you get out of your bubble, if you will, then people are like, who are you? What you doing here? You don't belong here, you know? And so they have to balance that.
Well, the thing with Kaepernick, you know, first of all, shout out to Kaepernick because, you know, he got a comfortable, I'm not going to say cushy, because I'm sure playing in the NFL comes with its own difficulties and problems.
Mm-hmm. No knees.
Well compensated. You're a celebrity. You're on the stage. You're living out your dreams. And to give all that up, or at least put it at risk, he didn't know it was going to come to this bitter conclusion that it did. But to give that up, to stand for those less fortunate, to stand for people who don't have a voice. I mean, the case that caused him to start kneeling is a case that I litigated, a case that I represented that family. And that was the Mario Woods case, where the young man was shot 29 times from head to toe, literally, by the San Francisco Police Department. That is the case that caused Kaepernick to kneel. And I represented that family in that case. So, you know, I know well enough, you know, why Kaepernick kneeled. and took a knee. But I also know well enough that for as many people that saw what happened to Mario Woods and are seeing what happened to George Floyd or what happened to Dante Wright or anyone else, there's just as many people on the other side that are ready to excuse away the officer's bad conduct. And that's what we always have to keep in mind. I tell people all the time, back when our country was divided, Civil War and all this stuff, what do you think when the Civil War was over? All these people just all of a sudden joined the side of the Union and was ready to embrace.
Kumbaya!
Yeah.
Nah.
That's not what happened. That's not what happened. In fact, it's a little factoid real quick. Man, they were going to do the whole 40 acres and a mule. That was what they were going to do to divide up the Confederacy land. They were going to give that to black people. The person who was in charge of administering that, to do that, it was up to 40 acres. Guess what happened to him? He got assassinated and killed. Okay? So, and then after that happened, that plan went away. So understand that this is a legacy of discrimination that we're dealing with. And it's deeply rooted in the American psyche. And as I think you guys said, it's as American as apple pie.
Well, I think we will have to have you back to talk about reparations, because I want my 40 acres and my mule, which I hope has upgraded to a Lamborghini by now. I mean, with interest and all. I'm pretty sure I'm owed a Lamborghini. But I'll take my mule too. Don't get it twisted. I'll take my mule. I want a donkey. I want a donkey. But anywho, I would like something. So we will have to have you back to talk about something else. But I do want to get two thoughts of yours. One, I know that we have kind of seen some insight into Minnesota and their rules, but we know that in Dante Wright, the officer was dismissed and charged with second-degree manslaughter. And I have a law professor I love. Shout out to Professor Korn.
Shout out to Professor Korn.
Who tried to break down for people who have expectations. You're watching the case and you want to see, does he get, prosecuted? What are the charges? And then have a feeling if he gets acquitted and he got what is the equivalent of reckless manslaughter. So like he would have to, I explained to somebody, like, maybe if she was running around with a gun saying woo, like reckless has a certain legal requirement. There's no intent because it's not murder, it's manslaughter. But if she did something, not only was she negligent, but was she also reckless in her negligence, which could be a hard standard to follow. So what are your thoughts about that?
Of what recklessness is?
No, of recklessness, manslaughter, or second-degree manslaughter with the rape Dante Wright, which we see she said she thought she was pulling her taser. She pulled her.
I've seen this cooked up, trumped up, contrived defense before in the Oscar Grant case, the Fruitvale movie case. Okay, the officer said the same thing. I meant to pull my taser. I meant to pull my taser, but instead I pulled my gun. It's a BS defense. That should be, because your intent was to use force when you probably didn't need to. So the fact that you used force when you didn't need to elevates it beyond a simple criminal negligence accident situation, where I was reckless, but I didn't mean to. I was talking on my phone and I drove through a stop sign and I killed somebody. Okay, that's what that's for. It's not for, I've been trained, I've been told, I've been warned, I've been given all the instruction, and I never
for 27 years.
And I never raised my hand and said, I don't feel comfortable having these two weapons. I need more training. I don't think I would do this in a pressure-filled situation. So, this should be kicked up, no doubt, to a much higher criminal charge. So, to me, what oftentimes happens, even in these criminal prosecutions, they go for the low-hanging fruit versus prosecuting them vigorously like you or I would. If it were the shoe was on the other foot, you'd have to fight your way out of a much higher criminal charge to get them to reduce it down to what ultimately they're charging these officers with now. But that's why I always say there's two justice systems, okay? There's one for us and there's one for the privileged.
Quick question, total sidebar. Something you said made me think about this. Have you guys heard about there being a civil case now that the verdict has been in? that there'll be a civil case against either the police department and or Chauvin?
Always it's gonna be. I thought they settled that.
Well, they
Did they settle that part?
27 million.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's 27 million. They settled that case. You know,
okay.
Those attorneys, they did a phenomenal job. They have raised the bar. And, you know, one of the things on top of the fact that cops never get charged, on top of the fact that Black folks are abused and killed and shot, is that when we get to the civil aspect, they always want to undervalue and devalue Black life. So I was pleased to see that result. And I imagine at this point, you know, there shouldn't be any additional civil lawsuits coming out of it.
For sure. He don't have no money. Don't sue nobody with no money. Don't call me to sue nobody with no money.
Yeah,
makes no sense.
I hate that. Yeah.
So I would say this, and how I want to end it, I think is just kind of asking everybody, what's next? I think that's where the pause is. Like, okay, this happened. We have these other cases pending. We see injustices every day. How do we move from here in a space that we can feel comfortable that our Black sons, like we talked about, it was 1919, and you have all these riots that were a replication of the same boiling pot and the same people trying to hop out. How do we stop that?
You gotta have a whole.
I'm asking. I'm like, for a mama who wants to know.
Yeah. You know, we gotta have a whole episode just on that alone.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna need y'all to send me a retainer check.
It's gonna be I owe you.
No. We gonna send it to you at Usher Bucks.
Oh man, look.
Take it.
Whatever the bill, we got you at Usher Bucks, baby.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, no, I don't silver bullet. One way that just one thing that's going to take care of all of this. It's a multifaceted approach because it's a multifaceted issue. So
yeah.
What's one thing? Okay, that was too broad of a question. But what's one thing that we should be doing as citizens? Maybe it's just jury service, or maybe it's, I don't know. What is it? Because I feel like we feel hopeless and helpless.
Yeah, vote the district attorneys out of office, or vote the mayors who appoint the district attorneys out of office who refuse to do the people's business and prosecute killer cops. I mean, it's very basic, because at the end of the day, people talk about the presidential election, which is important because they appoint judges and all kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's the local prosecutor who's deciding whether or not to hold cops accountable. And if they're unwilling to do it, then they got to go. So, that's one of the big things to me. And we see the difference. In San Francisco, out here in the Bay, we have a district attorney in Chesa Boudin who's bringing cases against police officers. And he has 2 cases of mine right now where I'm the civil attorney, civil rights attorney, and he's criminally prosecuting. In fact, just today, there was another announcement here in the Bay Area where a different district attorney in Contra Costa County is going to bring criminal charges against a police officer for a shooting death of one of my clients. So, that makes a difference, because that's what sends the message. And we need that in order to make police feel like they'll be held accountable, which hopefully will change their behavior.
Irene, what do you think?
Mine will be what I've already said. Folks, if you get selected for jury duty, show up. Go and participate in part of your civic duty, because your presence and being there and your thought process and your reasonableness and how you can relate to that. And I'm not just saying on cases, like it could be anything, criminal, like there are most times us that are in that defendant seat. So be there, kind of be a reflection of who that person is and how their life could be and how they reasonably acted, how they acted, and how you can maybe not only shed light for that person, but to the other jurors who are there as well. But also, if you're in the position, like we talked about also, of being pulled over by police, live another day to fight the fight. Do not try to fight the fight in that moment by yourself, alone, like Adante said, on the side of the road, where that officer most times might be jury, judge, and exactly. So I know it's going to be hard to swallow, our frustrations, our anger, our pride, but in that moment, please do so. I would get on defund the police, but I don't mean it from the perspective of just financial, but setting up other organizations or associations that can address some of these nonviolent calls so that police do not get called. That's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother conversation.
You have to come back because we gotta talk about that.
I'm only gonna come back. I'm only gonna come back if you promise to send me one of the drinks that you guys make. I've been watching your show. You guys make great cocktails. You guys are great company. Give great information, but I'm gonna need to taste something. So I'm gonna need a.
We promise.
Gotcha.
We promise.
Gotcha.
So wait, I didn't get to get what my suggestion was, and my suggestion is conversations just like this. In a mixed crowd, if you feel like you want to be a defender of the spirit of this, even if it's not your personal experience, have honest conversations with people. For so long, we've been taught to suppress the conversation or just keep the conversation lively, or if you don't want to input something negative, then don't say anything at all. No.
Yeah.
We need to have honest conversations about how this feels, about our experience in this, because often we talk to who could be our comrades, people who we feel are friends or who are of different races, and we don't feel comfortable saying anything. We don't feel comfortable bringing up something that's opposite of their experience. So having honest conversations with people around you that you may know, you don't know, you love, you don't love, to say, hey, no, I'm often afraid when the police pull me over. I know that's not your experience, but I'm gonna tell you the truth. My honest experience is every time it terrifies me. And I am, if you think I'm the exception, just know that exception's scared of the police too. Or whatever it is. But having these honest conversations is how you change the hearts of people who may be the next juror in a case like the Derek Chauvin case, right? And so they expand their view of the world. But if we're silent, and if we suffer in silence, and if we carry our pain in silence and our trauma and our PTSD in silence, they never know that this is not just a one-off experience. This is a Black person's experience in America. So
every day,
all day. So that would be my suggestion. But as always, we are so happy to have you. We are so honored that Mr. Pointer took some time out of his busy schedule to join us. We will send him a drink as thanks and as an invitation for next time. It's all in one. It's the invitation and a thank you. So don't say what's this. It's
all inclusive.
Okay.
Well, until then, cheers to great conversation, more libations. Please be safe, and until next time.
Cheers to George Floyd.
Yes.
Salute.